Tell the universe, close the door, we're recording.
Absolutely. We're actually trying to escape the material because that is so restrictive.
So my interpretation of yin and yang is opposites. It's black and white, 0 and 1. Well, I'm recording. Are you recording?
We're recording. That's right. See you later. It's okay. Just close the door.
Tell the universe, close the door. We're recording.
Absolutely.
Stay out. In the last recording, a friend of mine rang in on my phone again, which is what I'm used to record, and I hit the button and go, no matter what time of the day I pick, this guy rings in the middle of the podcast recording. Now I could put a message out there or be a bit more intelligent and somehow forward the phone, but I'm not that up with tech. So I'm just going, it's interesting to see the universe try to push in people or ring you or knock on the door. I mean, your phone has rang numerous times in all of our podcasts. And now, again, sometimes you left it in, sometimes you're taking it out. But you're going, we planned for this time. And again, we don't know many people. And there's no one really on the phone in both cases. It's just going, let's see if we can annoy you right at this moment in time and take it away and then start again. So it's actually, is that serendipity? Is that synchronization? Is that what we're talking about?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think synchronization is just this kind of concept that improbabilities will suddenly start to happen. It's like the moment you say, right, I'm going to put this object here and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. And when you come back, it's not there. And you're looking around and you're putting your hair out, and then you suddenly look in a different way and it's there again. And you're kind of going, what the hell?
Now, actually, there's the blip in time, the skip in the framework, or as I think you were mentioning the cat with Neo, the black cat.
Yeah.
This is the black cat where you go, there's something out of place.
There's something out of place, yeah. Now, I mean,
again, everything is in place.
Well, that's deja vu that they're talking about. So, but it would be the same thing, because in the film, The Matrix, when that actually occurred, it indicated that the agents were about to do something, and they were about to take some kind of action. And what's interesting...
There's something wrong with the framework.
Yeah.
Was that the terminology?
It was. They said there was something wrong, but it also gave the game away that something was about to happen. So they suddenly recognized that there was an event about to occur. Such as the internet has now suddenly gone quiet. And I can't see Carvin anymore. It's jumped in. We now have reconnecting. There is a poor network connection. And I can't see Garvin, but he might be able to see me. But we're going to carry on recording and see what happens. And the dogs are starting to bark outside now, so that's kind of weird. And we were talking about synchronization and improbabilities. And the conversation was going really, really well. Oh, we're back again. Okay, so we'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. We don't know what time you're consuming this. We don't know where you are in the universe. We don't know when you are in the universe. We barely know where we are in the universe, and when, and if at all. Do we exist? Are we a figment?
We do know it's now.
Now, not a now. Now.
It's there now as well.
No,
it's there now as well.
And there in the future, because it can't be this
or
now.
In the past.
Because we haven't recorded it and we haven't put it out there. So we know no matter when the now is, it's another now, some other when, some other where. So, but for you to be consuming it, whoever you might be, if actually, depending on who you are, and it might be the cat in the room, and they can be consuming it while listening to...
But it could be your grandson taking this video back to your granddad to show him what we were doing now.
A couple of old codgers in the room were yabbering on about. Well, in this room, in their room, and I'm sure you'll be in the room as well, but what we were talking about prior to this, or before this, was nows, consciousness, unconsciousness, materiality, Do we exist? Does a table exist? Does a cat exist in the box? Is it dead? Is it alive? Is it yin? Is it yang? Is it zero? Is it one? Is it actually zero and ones are interesting in the sense that we came back to this. Zero and one is computer speak, but in our computer speak, and George put me right quite quickly and says, no, it's on or off. I go, no, 0 or 1. But then it's just
it's black or white.
Or what, yin or yang. And again, then yin or yang, I just learned from another program the other night that I thought yin and yang, or in my consciousness, was the opposites attract. Where actually it was possibly night and day and everything in between. And therefore, I'm not educated on what yin and yang is. It's my understanding after a lot of filtering and being bombarded with commercialism and so my interpretation of yin and yang is opposites. It's black and white, 0 and 1. Opposites attract. We are all without black, there is no white. Without 1, there is no 0. It's the fact, the whole. It's a sum of the whole. This is the universe. Yin and yang together is the universal consciousness.
Well, the interesting thing is, if you think about the ones and zeros as in the on and off, it's a switch. So basically, it's a light going on or a light going off. And there's this kind of tension between the
it's a physical switch being clicked back and forward to turn.
Oh, absolutely.
And to have the energy waves going up and down the wire to get to this light.
Yes, but don't forget, there has to be an agent to switch it on and off. Somebody has to switch it on and off.
This is back to where we were talking about the materiality of things and then energy and beams and someone else interfering or affecting to even be conscious, to be aware, to manipulate, to move. It starts getting very, very complex very, very quickly for something as simple as turning the light switch on. Before I finish, just that light switch going on and off reminds me of a story my father used to tell me. And they all used to live in the tenements in rat mines and back in 110 years ago. And light, they were one of the first in the building to have light. There was a switch. But there's 13 in the family, all these kids, and all living in one bedroom like tenement. But nobody was allowed to touch that switch till Daddy came home. And what Daddy did was turned on the light. And there was awe in the room. And just looking at this one little light bulb, and this is less than 100 years ago, and turning on the light was something spectacular. Something to be behold, something to wait for at the end of the day, for the whole family. And mother of God, if I turned on the light to be someone shouting at me, giving out to me, you're going, if I don't deliver 4 HD, 4K, intergalactic, 3-dimensional gameplay, when I come home, Daddy ain't delivering. George.
The interesting thing is that the light bulb, the original light bulb, is probably still going. And then there came a law out to say that you can't make eternal light bulbs. You have to give them an expiry date. And they have to break after a certain point. Otherwise, it's not financially viable. So the original light bulb is still flickering away. It still hasn't broken.
Well, hold on a second now. Was Adam and Eve, when they were in the garden, were they breakable before they broke themselves? Were they going to live forever in eternity, in heaven, or in this astral plane that's between hell and hell? Or there was no heaven and hell at that stage. There was just this place, Eden. Was Eden eternal? Would they have, I don't remember any children, Adam and Eve. Were Adam and Eve caught in a stasis of time that was going so slow or fast?
Basically, it was eternity. Wasn't
they were
it?
It was
eternal now.
Bliss.
They were in eternal now. Yeah. But it's only once they got sort of led astray by the serpent.
Right, someone broke the fucking light switch. Someone came in.
And then all of a sudden, and of course, that's when Cain was born, wasn't it?
No, that's when Chinese said we need to break things and basically there's an expiry date. So the first expiry date was in the Garden of Eden.
Eating the apple.
The apple was the expiry date. If you left it there,
and they didn't turn it into cider either, did they? They didn't turn it into cider.
Well, I think they did that day too. Afterwards, they went straight out of that garden and said
that was after Eve had.
That
Cain.
was actually the invention of commercialism, I believe. The first clothes. Suddenly you're going, okay, do I have what's in my wardrobe? I didn't need a wardrobe a minute ago. Now I have a wardrobe. Now I've got shoes and clothes. Actually, it was their back to consciousness.
Actually, there you go. Once they need the apple.
We are naked. We need to be clothed. We are we. There's two, actually.
But which way should the fig leaf go? Should it go forward or should it go backward?
I'm thinking more of Jacobs and fig rolls.
Does it go?
There's a fig in it. It can be sold. Fig rolls are very famous. And I don't even know how you got the figs in it. Well, you had to get them off the tree.
It was their figment of imagination.
Exactly. So we're going, the only product, actually 2 sets of products straight from the Garden of Eden. We have fig rolls from Jacobs, and I don't even know if Jacobs still exists. I think they were probably taken over with someone else. But when I was growing up, it's how did they get the fig rolls? But the awareness was, I need clothes. I've broken a switch. We've moved out of the Garden of Eden. We've hello commercialism. First opportunity to buy and sell, but no shops around, nothing selling at the moment. But we've gone a couple of, could be 5,000 years from then, or it could be, I don't know what that date was, but different religions might have different ideas. But that was the birth of commercialism, in my opinion.
Well, actually, it's interesting that once Cain was born and Abel was born, and then Cain killed Abel and went off, there suddenly seemed to be thousands of people, and Cain then found a wife.
So there was marriage, there was divorce, there was commercialism, there was figs and fig rolls, and...
Well, think of the solicitors and what they might have got then. How many fig rolls do you think they would have got for a divorce?
Well, it's back to... We should jump back to awareness and go for a second and go, right,
I know.
All these rules are suddenly there. There's expiry dates, end dates, start dates, contracts, marriage.
Best before dates.
Best before dates. I don't know whether there was open contracts in terms of, like, you might be married, but there's a bit on the side or not, or it wasn't in the contract. Now, we know our commercial contract...
Well, that's when all the concubines came along, isn't it?
Again, we don't know which religion, we don't know which part of the planet. It was all fine according to the set of rules and contracts of that location and that timeline and that set of beliefs. But I mean, awareness is, the whole point is, now we're talking about contracts, materiality, bodies that are entering into contracts with other bodies. These bodies are collections of awarenesses, at moments in time based on the rule set of then. And we've built upon that in generation
Well, there's
after
something
generation.
that's quite interesting. You think about it, you're talking about all of a sudden, Adam and Eve, they'd eaten the tree, they'd eaten the apple, and they became self-aware. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to have the apple become self-aware when it becomes quantum.
No, quantum physics. I'm not an expert on quantum physics, and I think you were trying to touch on it earlier on. I was having trouble with Fibonacci numbers. I have trouble saying the word. I don't even know if I'm saying it properly.
Fibonacci, I think it is.
Fibonacci.
I was going to Fibonacci
Is it PHI?
as well.
I don't even know. How do you pronounce PHI? It's not...
Fee, like filmmaking.
Right, fee. As in F-E-E. So the fee, as opposed to the fee.
Yeah. But then we go back to what you were talking about again. If we're talking about fee, then did Cain sort of charge a fee for the fact that...
No, they pay the price. The fee was charged.
They pay the price. Yep.
The rest of us are paying ever since. This was a recurring income model from day one. On the official day one, everybody pays since. There's no free ride in the universe anymore. There's a lifetime guarantee for the life that you have, but when it's over, you might even pay after that. Your kids could be still paying. You can leave the bills behind. Actually, on the way out, if I think about it, you had those coins on your eyes under whatever religions to pay the ferryman. So you could actually go off into the next...
the Egyptians, wasn't it? Yeah.
You're still paying the ferryman. You've got to pay... Actually, these days to have a plot up the hill with a cross on it, you've got, space is at a premium. So you may not even be able to have a plot. You might have to be in a jar, cremated. And so therefore, what's the price after I'm gone? Actually, I remember having an argument with my wife there like a couple of weeks back about, let's say, doing up a will and having a will. And I was saying, I'd love the kids to keep in the house for the next generation. Who'll have the house and how will we share it up? And I'm going, I'm gone. I'm dead and gone. I'm expired. I'm thinking I'm still there. And I'm going to be saying, you're going to be living here, you're going to be living there. I'm going to affect the next generation based on how I split the house up and who gets what, where, and when. No, I'm gone. Doesn't matter. I'm past my expiration date. I'm stale. I'm not best before. I'm expired. Therefore, I should have no effect on the next nows of my kids' existence, other than the fact I might have left something that they can consume into the future beyond memories.
And it wasn't an apple.
Well, I hope. Well, there's 9 apple trees. They're getting a couple of apple trees each, but they're going to be they will make cider. So there is cider involved. There's apples involved. It's actually a bit of a legacy that I will be leaving. Will be a couple of apple trees. And actually, if they can name a cider after me, I'd be very, very happy. But you're not going to get much out of 9 apple trees. It'll be boutique. It'll be niche, but it'll be valuable. It's value over quantity.
Unless they knock the house down and actually build an orchard.
Well, look,
on the grounds that you've
I
got
can't
there.
argue unless I'm haunting them. And we've touched on, I remember when we bought this house first and we were walking down the town, people used to say, it's a big house, it's an old convent, and what it is it used to be an old folks home. And we'd meet people in the town, they're going, my mother died there. And I go, you sent her there. Was she happy?
Yeah.
She loved it. She was very happy in that old folks' home. And I says, well, that's grand. Now, we haven't seen any ghosts lately. You lot sent her there. You loved her. She was in a loving environment. So this house is not haunted in her opinion. But if it was, there'd be an awful lot of them. But my kids aren't waking up in the night screaming with The Exorcist, but I hope they got it not. But in terms of where you go to die, there's a physical place. When you're dead, then your body is interned somewhere else, or your ashes, your spirit. Back to one of our last podcasts, we're going, did the energy, did the essence of you, of them, leave the body at that point in time, and hopefully not hang around in this house, and go back to the universe somewhere else? The aura, the essence, the spirit, individual. So I'm hoping there's none of them hanging around here. They've gone on to a happier place, a happier realm, and ultimately that's back to this consciousness and energy, George.
Hal. Do you remember Hal from 2001 Space Odyssey? Basically, because you're talking about the going to the stars and the experience that they have as they go back to the universe. And if you think of the main character, Dave, was going in a spaceship and went through all that kind of kaleidoscope mayhem and craziness, and then he disappeared. He went back to the stars.
Now, an interesting thing about HAL, I think you could probably tell me. Can you remember?
No, I can't remember.
It's IBM. The next letter is after or before it.
Oh, yeah, of course. Right, okay.
So,
IBM.
No, it's HAL. It's not IBM. It's H.
Yeah.
So there's a play. I can't remember who was the chap that wrote the book. Is it not Asimov?
No. English Clark.
Arthur C. Clarke. But that was where the letters came from for Hal. He just took was it before? The letters before. So there's always little stories underneath the story, a different level of something. But what was Hal? Was he actually self-aware? I don't know.
I don't think he was. I think what happened was he got broke. He wasn't in sync.
Yes.
He got broke. Basically, there was conflicting programs. And if you think about Asimov had this 3 laws of robotics. The first one was that you were meant to do everything for human beings that they asked you to do. The second one was effectively you weren't meant to harm a human being, and the third one was you're not to do everything for the human beings if it meant that it hurt somebody else.
I'm reminded,
and there was a conflict.
Yeah, I'm reminded I don't know why, but of the IT crowd, and the first lines of everything is, did you turn it on and off again? That's it. Control, Alt, Delete. Does that fix it? Most of the time, it's that simple. It's just restart it. Actually, an awful lot of films I've seen is, can we reboot the system? Can we set it back? Can we fix the framework? Can we just Control, Alt, Delete? Did you turn it on and off again? Is it plugged in? Are we plugged in? Because we're wired. People are wired.
Well, isn't it interesting? Because that was the premise of Apollo 13 was, can we reboot? It was also the premise of Geostorm, which is a more recent film where they had to reboot the station. So you've had all of those things where the central ploy within the story is, can we reboot?
There's an intro. I like this because we're back to what we were talking about the books. Can we reboot ourselves? Can we restart again? It doesn't matter what age we are. We're not Control Alt Deleted. We're not deleted. We're not expired. We're still here. The age doesn't matter. I want to reboot. I want to restart. I want to clean the framework. I want to defrag myself and go. It's time to reload. Not reload the same, but reload anew.
There's a TV series called Travelers, and what it is at the moment you're about to die, or a character's about to die, some people from the future trying to save their future inject themselves in to try and change their future. And as the story goes on, there's a character that falls in love with another one, but she becomes ill. And then they have to try and reboot it. But the worry is that will she be the person that she is now, or will she be reset to what she was
you're
before
back to yourself.
or
I
afterwards?
think in the context of ourselves, the rebooting, it's like, okay, we want to reboot ourselves, no, or re-energize, and knowing that we have, it's back to the, I think another podcast that we had, we're saying we're 5% full. There's 95% of potential and possibility there. We're not going to be able to access all this space in our brain, but if we can expand our learning and grow, then we might be able to shoot some new neurons and open up some new paths and become a new version or better version of ourselves.
But let's think about that. Effectively, what you could do is if you go back to its factory default that you're resetting it to when you potentially reboot. But if they rebooted me and you and we went back to my grandson's age of 1, I don't mean physically, but mentally he started off
right, no, that's it, because I was going factory.
That becomes really interesting because you're going to go, hang on, I've got to learn to crawl again.
My youngest, Ava, there, she just said, or Hannah actually, my eldest, she said to my wife, have you got 4 children or 3? Dad is becoming more like a bloody child. I'm going around making farting noises, burping noises, humming to myself, whistling as I go up and down the corridors. It's like, actually, it looks like I'm on the mentally deranged. If anyone else was observing from a third party out of context. So I'm going...
Well, here, that's where it gets interesting, because when you're a child, you have no...
Inhibitions.
You're free to do things and try things. And I was watching something on education, and they were talking about how when you get into the educational system, you're basically taught to be a robot, a slave to the system, effectively. And then what we're trying, and the people that aren't slaves to the systems become the gurus and the rich people, or the people that set up amazing corporations.
We were talking about earlier podcasts we had, we mentioned terminologies like silos, and we're trying to put people into boxes and into silos and put on these parameters of this is your job, this is what you're to do for the man, for to work. Don't do more, don't do less.
And you're being forced
That's
to
the job.
School
don't try to do more.
Yeah.
And then when people try to do more, they realise you don't fit in that box. You're too big for the box. But most people just keep on forcing themselves with like a mallet and a hammer and a tongs or whatever, square peg in a round hole. You go, stay in the box. Yep. Keep in the box. I'm in a box.
But if you were allowed to remain as the child is right at the very beginning, and the way that basically kids can teach themselves stuff. They don't need people to get involved and mess up their lives by trying to constrain them to doing certain things. They can learn, I've just watched my grandson learn to walk, and he's now walking with his arms down. He was walking around like this before. Now his arms are down. It's only 2 weeks. Now he's learning stuff through what he's observed. He's actually put into practice, and then he'll get disciplined and stop to do stuff eventually, and then he'll go to school.
That's it.
And then it's kind of, will he at the other end be able to say, look, I'm a dropout. I'm going to do exactly as I did as a kid. And when you get older, like I'm seeing with my mum, she now acts more and more like a child because she's suddenly losing those same inhibitions she spent a lifetime building up.
Well, that's what my sister says. Now, she's an both my sisters are artists. Well, one of them who will be more commercial than the other, I don't know which one I'm talking about now, I sort of mixed them together. But she's saying an awful lot of time in her art, she's trying to go back to the childlike, actually the journey for most artists is to refine that childlike wonder, to draw and paint like that without that inhibition of structure and form and learning that they've actually learned in art college. But in order to get their own creativity out, they could be nearly trying too hard because they're trying to be too perfect or to shadow these, So actually, to have the skill set of that applied back to the childlike wonder is where most good art comes from. Now, admittedly, my father, when you looked at some paintings out there, I don't know whether Jackson Pollock's or what it is some of the stuff you see, he goes, a kid could do that. And they go, exactly. But the kid didn't.
That's right.
But what it is that person was not inhibited to let that art and creativity come out and get it onto canvas or whatever.
Picasso could turn out images of drawings of observations that looked almost photographic. His drawing skill was actually that amazing, but he suddenly realized that commercially he'd never make any money doing that. So he went back to a childlike state of drawing, and that's where he made most of it, because it became abstract. It had that innocence which the other had started to lose because it was becoming too complicated.
No.
And I was thinking about that just now, about the complicated. One of the videos that we've just done for this series, what happened was things were getting out of sync, and it was getting so complicated, and I got myself into a complicated set of on the timeline that actually yesterday I went right back to square one and re-edited it and edited it faster than I had done the first time. We overcomplicate things, and we end up not being able to see the wood for the trees.
That's it. We're so deep in the silo.
And sometimes the reboot becomes the best thing to do, to start afresh.
Stop and start again. Go back, take it all. Don't keep on going deep. If you're digging a hole, you're not going to dig yourself out of the hole. You got to get out. You got to physically get out of the hole and maybe dig another one. Actually, in my business speak, many a time I'm going in terms of some of the systems and data, and it's so dirty and distorted. You're in a dirty pond, and all you're doing is swishing the dirt out of the way to make a clean patch. But it's just going to swish around and come back in. You got to physically get out of the pond. Maybe build a swimming pool. You can actually get a swimming pool built faster than being in a dirty pond trying to swish it around and find a clean patch. So in terms of ourselves, we're going, you got to go, I'm happy that, look, I found you in my journey of change, of transformation. I think transformation is now accelerating in terms of confidence to try new things and talk about subjects I go, I know nothing about. I'm sticking my hand up. Anyone who wants to comment and mention underneath anywhere, you go, what's a fee? What's a Fibonacci number? I'm fibbing. I'm fibbing about Fibonacci.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying it.
One of the great things, though, about this is that although you're enjoying that, apologies, but one of the great things is that because you're coming so fresh to all this, you have no prejudices, you have no restrictions, you have nothing holding you back. You can go childlike into this and explore and ask the question, why? Why this? Why that? Be childlike in the approaches
that's what we want people to do. We go, what does it
freshness
mean to you? You don't have to go off and learn all. Actually, we were taught the couple of words that I took out of that particular article we were mentioning before was, the journey to the self-awareness, be it the computer or be it the individual. And for the computer to quantify it, it has to go on the same journey in order to actually quantify and define the individual. Actually, if we want to actually transfer the essence of the individual, I think it's something carbon. There's a thing on Netflix at the moment, but that's
altered carbon.
So what they're doing, it's very similar to what you were talking about earlier on. They're downloading and uploading you into the sleeve. The sleeve is the body, but the consciousness is the individual. The individual can be eternal if you can upload and download them with this capability into this computer. That if you can actually have the technology to harness the essence of the individual, then all tech in the future, be it organic growth or nanotechnology or technical growth, is just a body, just a vessel to harness the essence of the individual, which then can be possibly made eternal. And the rich are eternal in this program, and the poor can only afford the broken and broken sleeves. But I mean, it's interesting to see cloning, and the cloning is just the body you want, your most favorite body. And you're going, it's empty, it's a clone, it's not got a soul. The soul is the essence, is the consciousness of a individual, which now might go beyond a single lifetime. So do we want to be eternal is now what they're popping into this conversation, or is that too past expiry date for what we should be doing?
Well, in some cases where those stories eventually get is if you remember the Millennium Man, which was about an android who becomes self-aware. It was the Robin Williams film.
I remember that, yeah.
Eventually he was a bicentennial man, that's what he was.
Yeah.
Bicentennial man. He basically lived through 2 centuries, and although his great ambition was to become more and more human, a bit like Data.
It's the same thing, history
same
repeating
story.
In the future.
So the more he wants to become
Abstract
human,
history
then all of a sudden
repeating in the future.
he realizes, the interesting thing about that one is that I think Bicentennial Man came out after that particular story of the Data, but in the end, he realized that the human life, having childhood through to old age, worked as a system that you didn't really want to be eternal because you've done most of the things that you wanted to do.
But we're nearly going to do a spoiler alert. Picard and the end scene of Picard is actually back to Data. So we're back to going this journey of, Pinocchio, effectively, in the sense of the original, the wooden version of Data is Pinocchio, the child. Okay, admittedly, I can't remember if he grew or didn't grow, but he grew in terms of he wanted to be real. Data wanted to be a real boy. We all want to be a real boy and real girl. Actually, I think it's the opposite. Anyone that's real in terms of that's afraid of dying wants to be Data, wants to be the bicentennial man, wants to upload and download, is afraid of the unknown, and wants to be eternal. Now, eternal story to us is heaven, but we gotta have that leap of faith. We don't have any proof.
Do you remember the TV show Highlander from the,
there can only be one. There can only be one.
There can only be one. But in the essence of that one was the character gets to be eternal and then begins to realize that what he's actually lost is the mortality, because he lost his wife. He saw all the relationships grow. He outgrew them all.
Eternity. Yeah. If we're all eternal, then then it's like saying, well, that's actually your best Star Trek, in the sense of if there's no famine and no money and no then what is there? There's only the journey of exploration and growth. There's reach out to the eternal, not the abyss, but the abyss is actually, if there wasn't a chance for eternal growth and journey, then the universe outwards is, we're never going to find an end. As long as we have time, we can still grow and go. But if the universe only has so many pieces in it, and most of this universe is made up of empty space, then effectively to get to the next place, a lot of the journey in between is empty and void of things. But in terms of, if you can just materialize there and back and forth, then you're going to meet new people, make new friends. Actually, Dale Carnegie, make friends and influence people, whether they be aliens or not.
But the other part of this conversation was, as we talked about materialism and the lack of materialism, is that quite often we're actually trying to escape the material because that is so restrictive. And in fact, most of what we talked about is that once we're in time and place, we find ourselves, I meant place, not space, we find ourselves restricted by the limitations this world actually imposes upon us because we're materialistic. Whereas if we were not materialistic, we would then maybe be eternal.
Well, most of our journeys are a journey to a state of mind.
Yes.
And then if the mind, we're back to saying, occupies a space in time, or a length of space in time, because it's going to be from journey 1 to journey 2, being it starts here, ends there, the X amount of gigabytes, terabytes of occupying what we call space, being maybe space in a computer to store it. But if the universe is the global storage space and the global and the universe, I use the word global within the universe definition, but the universe is the computer, is the conscious awareness, therefore we already occupy that four-dimensional space and time, and whatever amount of space and time that is, it's what those waves are made up of in terms of state of mind. What are the ones and zeros, when you put them in that combination, represent? It represents your life and how you occupied it, and all those moments and nows for your bit of space in the universe. And what quality or value does that actually represent? Is a bunch of ones or zeros, on and off switches, or does it actually, when someone else reads it, or an observer can they consume it as interesting space and time?
But maybe that's the problem. Maybe we shouldn't be trying to consume it because that's a materialistic consumption. Because once you become internal, there is no need for consumption.
That's it. We're trying to generate it, not consume it. We're trying to create it to be entertaining, to be involving, to be meaningful, as opposed to consuming time just because it exists. We can't generate time, but we might be able to extend it or influence it in some way or form based on health and being healthy enough to last a bit longer. But we won't go into predestination, and if we have a defined amount, whatever that length is within those parameters, it's how we generate the wave of interest and content in terms of legacy to whoever it is, the observer. Because we don't know who's observing. It doesn't matter. We are occupying it. It can be a 0 or it can be a 1. It could be on or it could be off. It could be good. It could be bad. It could be yin or yang.
And sadly, your mobile is probably about to go.
I have a minute. There's 30 seconds for you to wrap up. Or
30 seconds. All right. Well, look, I think we have come to a really good end because of the way you were sort of talking about that there. So again, just thank everybody for joining us on this little conversation. We are going on a journey where we don't know where things are going. It's improbable what we may end up talking about, which is synchronization. But I think this episode is more about reboot.
Yes. Don't be off, be on. Don't be 0, be 1. Signing off.
Bye for now.
Good man. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and click on the bell for notifications.